right, it is 2 o'clock and it is August 14th, 2020. I'm going to call our emergency meeting to order. The superintendent had called this meeting and had requested this meeting, so I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent. I guess before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge that all of our board members are here. Reverend Golden just stepped out for a minute, but he is present, so everybody is here. And with that, Madam Superintendent, can you give us a little bit of background on why you've called this meeting today?
I did. We've had, I believe, a little bit of confusion and needed some clarity on the new board policy 8450 that was passed Tuesday evening. And I have come with some recommendations and some protocols that I would like to have the board reconsider and look at of possibly amending the existing policy. If you would like, I can go through them, or did you want public comment to go now or at the end? However you would like me to proceed.
If they've signed up to speak on this issue, I think we should definitely address that issue. However, we need a motion before we can have the public comment, because that is what they're going to be commenting on.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
if Mrs. Boyce can pass out what you have. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So my motion is to amend.
Recommendation.
I'm sorry. You're right. My recommendation is to amend the existing policy with said amendments. There's slight amendments on page 2. And then I've also listed a set of operating protocols for the policy that comes directly out of the current, most up-to-date CDC guidelines that was just updated on August 11th, titled Guidance for K-12 School Administrators on the Use of Cloth Face Coverings in School. So I do think that those new amendments and adjustments with the CDC guidelines are really going to be needed to take into consideration of this policy amendment. As we knew when our COVID situation began, the first recommendation by the CDC was that no masks were required. So this has been an ever-moving, ever-evolving virus that we've gone from that point to the latest guidelines that just occurred this week. And I do think that they've made them very specifically to be tailored and considered for the application of public school, because they do know that there are situations and allowances where a cloth mask may not be the best, most useful device in terms of protection. So I would recommend an amendment to the policy and the protocols. If you would like me to read them, I can, or if you are reading them yourself, or however you would like me to proceed.
Madam Chair, I move for the approval of the superintendent's recommended amendments for policy 8450 and adoption of her recommended operating protocol for the implementation of policy 8450, which incorporates the latest CDC guidance from August 11th, 2020, which we did not have enough time on Tuesday because it was just put out on Tuesday to incorporate therefore the appropriateness of this emergency meeting. That is my motion, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I second. Madam.
Thank you.
I've got a motion and a second.
By whom?
Dr. Hopes has made the motion. And Mr.
Mr.
Minor
Minor
has
seconded.
seconded it.
All right.
Now public comment.
Let's move forward with public comment, and then we can have discussion.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Mr. Gibolino, you're up first.
I love peanuts.
I assume I can take my mask off? Yes? No?
No, do not take your mask off,
I
please.
cannot take the mask off.
When you are speaking is when we most need you to wear your mask.
Okay, so, I guess first order of business, do we have an overhead projector? No? Okay. So, that's disappointing. I've been asking it for a year. I mean, it's a $400 or $500 item. Why it's not here yet is beyond me. So let's talk about the COVID-19. How is it different from the cold? You know, millions of kids get colds every year, and they're sent home for 10 days. There's no vaccine for the cold. There's no cure for the common cold. So I don't see anything on the horizon on COVID-19 coming up anytime soon. So I think, you know, if you're going to shut down a school, what are going to be some of the alternatives? And I had all sent you the MASH proposal in an email today, and I met with several pastors yesterday at Reverend Golden's church, Old Church at Ward Temple. Had a very successful meeting, and the churches are ready to step up to the plate and fill the void should a school have to be shut down. All we're asking the school board is to look into the opportunity of having these churches step up to the plate and work with the school board if the school gets shut down. You know, I'm a big proponent of walking to school. So if you've got to shut down a school and we're busing kids in, how nice would that be for the students just to walk to the nearest church, do their Zoom meetings, do their e-learning, and collaborate at a church. I think the school board should look at this possibility. It's a great opportunity for handling many crises. So the proposal, just prior to the Korean War, was developed the MASH unit to move medical resources. We are proposing the same concept with a slight twist, calling it MASH Initiative, Manatee Assisted School Health Initiative. The idea would be a satellite platform around the school, but off campus, to disperse kids into different locations needed because of sanitation, quarantine, or other issues that limit the use of school property. There's no doubt in my mind there's going to be catastrophic failure at one of the schools, and I'm just concerned that you won't be prepared for it. So we have several churches that have already stepped up to the plate. They've offered their churches and congregation to help. They're willing to staff some of that as well. So I think it's Mr. Kevin has done a great job trying to coordinate that. I would suggest that we touch base with him as well. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
In closing, I do want to say the overhead projector is really an issue with me. And I'll keep bringing it up every meeting until it's put back up. Thank you.
I seem to have misplaced my Post-it note with public comment on it. I don't even have that much stuff up here.
Catherine Hughes is the next one on my list.
Who is?
Catherine Hughes.
Oh, Catherine Hughes, come on up. Thank you, Madam Chair. They're not popping up on my screen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Hughes. I'm 17 years old, and I'm a high school senior at Manatee School for the Arts. Your changes to Policy 8450 don't go far enough, and here's why. I've chosen to take online classes, but I don't need to read the obituaries of my friends, teachers, or their families. Until coronavirus is under control in Florida, virtual classes should be the only option. While students and parents have the luxury of choosing whether to go online or in person, it's not optional for the teachers. You're playing Russian roulette with people's lives. The pediatric percent positivity rate in Manatee County at 13.8% is double the overall percent positivity rate. Put students together and that rate will explode. You will expose teachers to this virus for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. When you put 3,500 teachers, many of them at high risk, in this academic petri dish, all will be exposed, most will be infected, and some will die. The result isn't just likely, it's certain. Teachers aren't volunteering to take this risk. It's either work or starve. When teachers die, it will be front page news, and someone will be held responsible. Cynthia Saunders, you said last month that pandemic or not, COVID or not, school continues. If you care nothing about the students and teachers, but you care about your political survival, your decision to reopen schools instead of going online only will haunt you for the rest of your political career. Students and teachers should not be collateral damage in the governor's obsession with reopening schools. You know how the blame game will play out. When the deaths start to climb and schools close, expect the governor to say it was your fault. You are writing your political legacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Johnson.
Carla Akins.
Ms. Akins? Did I say that right?
So I have Carla Akins, Aikens.
No? Okay, thanks.
Next one I have on my list is Rick Murphy.
Oh, yeah, Rick.
That's the last person I have
Mr.
on my
Murphy,
list.
you're up. Thanks for the assistance.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I feel like a bandito with all this on.
We all do.
Anyway, Board Superintendent, I come to speak about your contact policy you reviewed today. For the record, my name is Rick Murphy. You can hear me this mask. And as a former superintendent, school administrator, I would like for the board to consider to allow principals and teachers to make adjustments based on students' needs. You have a lot of students that have anxiety. They have disabilities, they have 504s, they have IEPs that will have to be addressed in next year reviews. IEPs are reviewed every year. So that's going to be a constant challenge to do that. After talking to the teachers and administrators, I believe that that's a necessity to happen. Having worked in elementary school, that is a real test, especially pre-K to 3. So there's going to be some real challenges making this happen. It's the full mask policy as part of the policy here. But I really think we need to look at flexibility for teachers and also school administrators in administering this policy. When you get into 504s and IEPs, the law is very clear. You have to make exceptions based on their needs. So I'd really consider the board to review that part or allow the administration and teachers flexibility. Also, recess in PE is very important. Having worked as a PE teacher in elementary, it's tough enough without this. So you have kids out there running, having a mask on is going to be tough, and they really don't need a mask. I understand the policy originally was, the plan was, originally, of course, that you'd have to wear a mask during PE and also recess. So the challenge is going to be separating kids in PE and recess anyway. So I agree that students shouldn't have to wear a mask during PE and also recess. And I appreciate the board reviewing that and take that into consideration, and also the administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else on my computer. I don't know if Mrs. Boyce has anybody else. Did you sign up, April? Okay. Do you have her, April?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Come on down. Will you say your name for the record?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name's April Colbreth. I'm a citizen of Manatee County. I've just moved here. We just moved back here last school year. I've served the county as a public servant for 24 years, so I'm very familiar with the county. I have probably about, as high as the number sounds, 2,000 close friends that are registered voters in Manatee County that share my same opinion. And I've talked with every single one of them over the course of this pandemic. off and on. Our main concern is having to wear a mask in school for the whole time at school. And I debated whether I was even going to mention this or not. My daughter goes to a private school. My daughter doesn't attend county school. This is one of the reasons why. And I'll briefly tell you what her private school plan is. They are required to wear face coverings, such as the one I'm wearing right now that me and my daughter with our asthma can breathe just as fine in. I forget I have it on. One of the very good things about this face shield that I'm wearing right now that I've found myself, I know we have some other Cookie Monsters in the room, I should be losing weight because every time I go to stick something in my mask, in my mouth, I hit my mask. And that's one of the, kids stick their hands in their mouth all the time. Like can't we cure the flu? You would think. I cannot breathe with the mask on. Another alternative would be to have the shield on and then the little mask, but your nose being out so that, they're not any spitting or anything because this doesn't touch your face. But I have a minute and a half left. I mean, this pandemic started at spring break. We've had ample time and ample opportunity, just like the private schools had, to get a plan in action here. This isn't something new. We knew what was going to happen. You could foresee this. I can tell you what's probably going to happen the first 2 weeks of school is the first kid gets sick, we're going to pull them all and we'll all be online. But as it stands now, all of our parents have a choice. So leave your child at home if you can. The kids that are going to the schools right now are the kids whose parents chose to put the kids in the school right now. And I agree with the first gentleman that spoke. We really should have a monitor in here so that we can put things down on. That would be a great investment. But there's already other learning options. So the kids that we're talking to and the parents that we're talking to and having to accommodate for chose to do this. So, and just to touch on this, teachers also have a choice. There are plenty of jobs and plenty of careers that teachers can get, just like other public servants. A lot of public servants, law enforcement, firefighters, nurses, we're going to work. And there's the CDC guidelines and what they're giving you, what they gave you yesterday. We don't have the appropriate numbers. We don't have accurate numbers. That's not a mystery. They changed all the time, so we can't go off that. I think I got it all out.
Thanks very much, ma'am.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay. Guess that concludes public comment.
I had 4 on my Post-it note, which I lost.
Okay, so we've had a motion and a second on this. I see Reverend Golden is lit up. Does the person that made the motion, do you want to start, or do you want me to start with who's lit up to speak?
I would like to start, Madam Chair.
Go for it.
So first, I'd like to thank the student for coming forward, and it's really appreciated. But I think something that may help put all this in context, and I've got maximum protection on, so I hope everybody, is the mic still, can you hear me? Okay. So when each one of us took office, we had to take an oath of office, and in that oath, we had to swear or affirm that we would uphold the Constitution of the state of Florida, the United States, and the laws of the state of Florida. One of those laws in the state of Florida is there is a number of days that we have to provide in-school education. And the only time during an emergency we are allowed as elected officials to deviate from that is if the governor, with his sole executive authority, waives those statutes because of an emergency. The statute, which requires us to provide, I think it was 180 days of basically brick and mortar school each year, and we cannot start that school year until after August 10th, is state law. If we were to not do that, the governor has the authority to remove us from office. So we are bound as school board members to provide for those days of education each year and we have the responsibility for the health, safety, and welfare of students that are in our charge, thereby leading us to this particular policy. And to the speaker, with the shield, I will tell you, and this is why we have to have these policies, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, this is the second one, the first SARS virus was in 2002, 2003, is an airborne virus. One of the early studies in the United States, not in China, in the United States by Johns Hopkins and published around the first part of April, found that there was competent virus, meaning virus that could cause, that's still contagious, is still alive, it could cause an infection, in the air conditioning duct of hospital rooms of patients who had been discharged 2 days prior. So a COVID-19 patient was in the hospital. The virus was put out in the air from their nose and their mouth and got into the air conditioning ducts. And the virus was there. So you're right. This is a dangerous virus. It is in the air. Face shield, the face shield protects from splatter in large droplets. The anatomy of your eye in the little corner, lower part of your eye, I'm not going to touch my eye, is a duct. It's a drain. The reason why your nose runs when you cry is because of the volume of tears. Your tears are drained into your nasopharyngeal passages. That's why when you cry, your nose runs. Because all those tears are going down into your upper respiratory system, and that's how you get rid of it. Meaning, a splatter that gets into your eye can inoculate you with the virus. The face shield protects you from that. An airborne virus, you are not protecting other people from yourself, and you're not protecting yourself from breathing in the virus if you're not wearing a mask. This mask is a NIOSH N95, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. It's a U.S. certification, meaning that this mask will filter out, in this case, the SARS virus. It's not going to get out of my system because it's being filtered, and if I'm breathing in. So everybody sitting around the speaker on the third row who is not wearing an N95 mask, you are not protected from her. Because all the masks that you're wearing are just a cloth face covering. The only time cloth face coverings work if everyone is wearing them or you have adequate separation. This is the maximum protection. I'm protecting myself and I'm protecting you, and I'm protecting myself from splatters, a cough, someone speaking loudly. This new policy addresses the new guidance that came out from the CDC. Finally, we have good, clear guidance and recommendations that the superintendent has and her staff have incorporated into these operating protocols. And so, Madam Chair, that is the basis for the need to make this change. I think it is adequate. It also provides, should the CDC change, that we will, where's my sticky note? We would change that, we can incorporate it. It provides for our special needs students, our ESE students, our IND students, who do have physical, developmental, and emotional limitations where a mask is probably not going to be effective for them. We have students that have respiratory disorders. This policy incorporates the CDC's guidance on alternatives and accommodations for our classroom educators in our earlier grades, pre-K through third grade, that are teaching language skills, speech skills, where the classroom educator needs to be able to see the children's movements, their mouth movements. They need to see the instructor's mouth movements. This policy provides for specific educational and instructional activities where a mask is contraindicated. This policy provides for what I had always intended, that when you can have social distancing outside during recess, during PE, that masks are not required. You don't have to wear a mask all the time, as long as you are in an open air environment and you're adequately separated from other people. If we do not follow these guidelines, we will not be able to maintain open schools. And so, Madam Chair, that's the reason why we need to adopt this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Golden?
No, ma'am. Let the second speak and let Mr. Kennedy take my place in line.
All right. Mr. Minor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that Dr. Hopes summarized some of the reasons, most of the reasons, why this amendment is appropriate and necessary. One is the flexibility as we go on by incorporating the CDC requirements as they may adjust, make to the needs as they perceive them. I think that's really important. It also takes care of a complaint that I received from many people was everybody has to wear a mask, even a 2-year-old and that type of thing, and it takes away that kind of absolute burden upon the people in our community. It's adjusted, and I think that the superintendent's amendment really addresses all of the complaints that I heard about the kind of overkill of wearing masks, and that is why I support this motion, and I think that all of us will be much better and much safer because of it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Kennedy?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I actually have a request of the board that we go through this document, because I'm sure we all, over the past few days, have heard from quite a few parents and teachers and staff. So I would really like us to take our time and go through this, just to make sure we have covered every piece of input that we've heard over the past few days. But before I go into that, I do want to, and I've said this a couple hundred times via email already, but I do want to apologize to the community out there, because we did not take our time. To me, this has been a lesson in don't write policy on the fly, this was outside of our normal 30-day process. And because it is an emergency policy, and I understand why we did what we did, but I just did not think through all of the variations and unintended consequences, as the term was used the other night, of this. But I appreciate the superintendent calling this meeting so we could get a handle on this. We could put parents' minds to rest and provide clarity to our principals as well. And it's for that reason I would like to go through. We don't have to do it right during my comment. I just have a couple things I'll say and I'll pass it on. But if we could come back to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. But I will just, I just want to throw one thing out to start before we get into the actual operating protocol document. And it's actually on the policy itself, as amended on Tuesday night. And if board members, you just flip over to page 2 of our amended policy. In the first paragraph, well, I guess it's the second paragraph, but about 3 lines down, the CDC and the Florida Department of Health recommend that everyone wear a face mask that covers the nose and mouth. Now, ma'am, I'm going to use your shield, and I heard that this week. Some folks' interpretation of that is that face shield is covering their nose and mouth. But when you look at the protocol document, I'll take you back over there for 1 second. The CDC is using over and over again cloth face covering. So I think we might want to fix that wording to match the operating protocol. And I think, as has been said and as noted on the protocol document, there are situations where a face shield does make sense, especially in the elementary level. As Dr. Hope said, at some of our ESE students at the secondary level. So I think and they're mostly here, but that's why I want to go through it to make sure we hit them all. But board members, I just want you to consider that. Do we want to incorporate into our own policy 8450 the same language that's used by the CDC, which is cloth face covering? We can go back into this later, but that also relates to the question about gaiters, and I never knew the word gaiter until a few days ago, because I was wearing them, because they don't go anywhere, they wrap around your ears, but the ones I had that I got from Amazon are made of like polyester or something. So then I learned in the Washington Post this week that those polyester gaiters are actually worse than wearing no mask at all. Now, if that gaiter is cloth, it should be okay, because it does cover it's made of cloth, it does cover the nose and mouth. So I've ordered a few of those, so I don't have to keep dealing with this disposable mask going up and down. But, so board members, I just want to kind of bring that language difference to your attention, and Madam Chair, the superintendent did have something to say.
I think
I would,
page 3.
I would just like to clarify something. If you look under the protocols, we describe, if you look on the last page,
Page 3.
we do just that. And this operating protocol for the board policy 8450, the term face mask, cloth face mask, or cloth face covering are interchangeable. Because if you look at the language and in the protocols, we've copied it straight out of the CDC. They use them interchangeably.
Okay.
And actually, the face mask that you have on is not cloth, but it's acceptable. The N95 is not cloth, but it's acceptable. So we put that caveat so the gaiter that you spoke of, if it's cloth that goes around your neck and up here, it would be acceptable. That would be acceptable. We've defined where face shields are acceptable. You could very well have an ADA accommodation or instructional needs where we've put it in a narrowed focus where it would be appropriate, or students with disabilities. So the protocol, I do think, and we took most of this right directly out of that new adopted language. The only thing we did was on the second page, A through F, we defined examples where that language was stated and how it would be interpreted acceptable. We also talk about there is no face covering required during physical education classes, recess, or other outdoor activities, as long as social distancing practices are in place. Students must wear a cloth face covering or mask to and from, etc. So again, that language is in that guidance. It does not say that if you're outside and you have social distancing, you don't need to wear that apparatus. We also list in here protocols for mask breaks. And if a teacher's in their classroom and no one's in their classroom, they don't have to have a face covering on, or in an office, etc., because there's nobody in there. So I do think if you incorporate the protocols that, again, came from the guidance of the most recent K-12 school reopening with our policy that refers to it, but the policy also references that if the CDC has further updates, we will update according to their guidance as well. So
We're doing that without a meeting of the board.
Absolutely. So we put that caveat so that we can keep it current and not have to, continually go. So I do think, and I know you've not been able to read all the document there, but really most of it came printed directly out of that most recent. And how befitting that it happened Tuesday. However, I didn't know it was there Tuesday. And so when the next morning, when I realized, we had a bit of a confusion on our hand, I asked Mr. Chapman, as well as Mitchell Teitelbaum, legal counsel, to research, give me the most current language, because obviously we've misinterpreted or misguided unintended consequences. And lo and behold, we found the most up-to-date policy or their guidelines that we were not even completely aware of with all the language as it is today. So, thank you.
All right.
One more thing, just back on our updated policy. And Superintendent Saunders, I appreciate that. And that's exactly, Madam Chair, why I kind of wanted to go through the document.
Right.
Because only we're sitting here looking at it, and I just wanted to, I had missed that piece because it was at the end, but I appreciate you pointing that out. Right down at the end of the, again, on the back page, the paragraph that I was just in, to finish it off, the Manatee County Board of County Commissioners has issued an emergency resolution requiring the use of face covering, there should be an S there, face coverings inside building, or a face covering, either way. It's just a little clunky right there, but that's nothing. But I'll wait till we get to this. That's what I'd really like to go over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Reverend Golden?
Madam Chair, do you have any adjustments you'd like to make to what the superintendent has presented? Because I'd like to hear those too. Because I'm here simply wanting to move that we call the question. I think that what we promised the people that we would do on Tuesday was that if there were changes, if there were concerns that arose, as soon as they were presented to us, we would address them. I don't know how much quicker we could address this than on the Friday after the Tuesday that the latest amendments came out, and after having each of us being briefed on all of the ramifications of this, that we would just continue to machinate, if you will. I appreciate the input that has come from these people. I appreciate the tremendous number of times that I have been called stupid and the tremendous number of times I have been called clueless, all of that, and all of that's true. That's true. I don't have any problem with that. So I'm anxious to correct the mistake, and I won't call it a mistake. I'm anxious to improve what we did on Tuesday night. And I don't think that we have to go through line by line and page to do that. We just need to accept that the people that we have working here have labored long and hard to bring us something that we can present to the people. So that's why I'm waiting to speak, because I want all of us to have an opportunity to say what we got to say, and then I'm going to move that the question be called, because I'm just glad that we have the caliber of people that are concerned about about the parents and the students and the employees, that they have put that work in. Mr. Chapman, I want to thank you to Mrs. Odell, the teacher at Manatee, who educated me on her own time about the concerns that she had, the principal at that school, the two high school principals that I've talked with, who assure me that we're ready to move forward. So I'm just anxious to get this done, because we got a whole lot of other stuff that we need to also address. So I defer to the chair if there's other comments that you want to make to change what the superintendent has recommended.
I don't necessarily have anything I want to change. I would just like to state that this entire document were things that I stated Tuesday night to this entire board.
Okay, Madam Chair, we know you were right and we were all wrong.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm just teasing.
But I am the only one that has a kid in our schools.
That's true.
I am the one that taught elementary school. And these are the things that I said.
That's true.
So you have to forgive me for feeling frustrated that now I have people sitting up here going, well, this is a great idea.
I specifically remember the chair mentioning 2-year-olds.
But she has one. Yeah. And I agree 100%.
So please forgive me if I'm a little frustrated.
Fine.
I try really hard not to be frustrated. I don't come up here with emotion very often. But when you're talking about little kids, and I'm the one saying, I've got a little kid, and there's a lot of accommodations in the CDC, let's follow what the CDC says, that's all I ever asked for. I'm not some crazy, let's never wear a mask ever person. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is follow what the CDC says. And that's all I ever asked for. That is what is here. That is all we can require. That's all that we can ask for. And I think that's appropriate. I think we need our teachers to be able to teach, and that will require a shield sometimes. I think our students will need a shield sometimes. I think that that's appropriate. I think our kids will need a break when they go outside or when they're eating lunch. I have a 5-year-old. Have I practiced with her? I think what I learned from all the emails that I got was how much I'm not alone, because they spoke to me in so many ways. Because on Tuesday, I felt very alone up here. And I have never felt that way in the 4 years I've been here. But their emails made me realize I am not. That the way I have treated my own children, the way I have bought multiple things so she can try as many things, going into school, only exemplifies exactly what every other parent is going through right now. And I think they need some grace. I think we need some grace, and we all need some understanding that this is a very difficult time. I think that this is appropriate if we're following the CDC. I recognize that it will always change. I would expect that our schools and how they are run will also change. But until then, I think that what we can do is follow the most up-to-date guidelines.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes?
what I would like to do is go ahead and we can move forward if we're ready for a vote on this, and then I will follow it with a motion to provide authority for the superintendent to make any grammatical and punctuation corrections with S's and A's and.
I would be fine with that, but I do have one request. I think Mr. Kennedy is right in that this needs to be gone over a little bit. I don't necessarily believe that we need to go line by line, but there are a lot of parents that have contacted me saying, please make sure that shields are in there. Please make sure that brakes are in there. So I'd really like for you to affirm for everyone out there that is watching what is in here in accordance with the CDC accommodations and your procedures that you're putting in place so that our families are informed. And I'd also like for you to affirm that these accommodations is essentially what we have already told the parents and told the schools. It's just more clearly defined.
I do believe that this makes it very clear, because I think there was some confusion originally, which is why we were adopting a policy. And honestly, even had we adopted the one that I had originally brought forward, and that's not what you voted on, it was not as detailed and specific as what we have today. So in hindsight, even though it's been a very challenging few days, I think this is a better, more explicit, detailed approach where schools, parents, teachers, principals, maintenance workers know what the expectation of the board has and has in place in writing, and they can follow. So it does seem to capture and take considerations in of those that may need some accommodations. But yes, expectation right off the bat if you enter a building is to have a face mask or cloth face covering of some sort. But I'm going to go through 5 bullets just so that people know the allowances. Students who need a break from their face mask may do so with teacher permission, provided social distancing can be maintained and it's done under specific outdoor circumstances. Take them outside. Let them breathe. Let them get some air. Let them be kids to the best of our ability. We know this year is not going to be 100% normal, but we've got to give them some sort of normalcy in a safety environment. We also know employees need a break from a mask. I'm in this building, I can tell you, more than 10 hours, in some cases a day. If I had to wear a mask for a complete 10 hours, it would be quite challenging for me. So we certainly can't expect other employees to not feel the same way. Employees who need a break from wearing a face mask while on school property may do so if alone in their own office or classroom, or outdoors if they're maintaining social distancing. We do not need a lawn maintenance person driving a lawnmower to wear a mask. There's nobody around the person. They're not getting infected by another person. There's nobody around them. So I think this kind of gives them that discretion. An employee may not utilize common space, however. They can't take it off in a break room, a stairwell, or things of that nature because those are common places that other employees may be at. Also, if you're eating breakfast or lunch, drinking water, no face covering is allowed, but you do need to have social distancing in place. We do not want students without their face covering very close in proximity to one another. So make sure that social distancing is in place. I've already mentioned this one, but I'll mention this one again because I know this one was a big concern. There's no face covering required during physical education classes, recess, or other outdoor activities, again, as long as social distancing practices are in place. Students should wear the cloth face covering to and from those outdoor locations. Face shields that completely cover the face, wrap around the face, and extend below the chin will be allowed to be worn by students in grades pre-K through 5 and students with disabilities in classroom during specific instructional periods, as long as either social distancing or physical barriers of separation are in place. A cloth face mask must be worn during all other times and locations. So if you're on a bus, if you're transitioning in hallways, you will have to have a cloth face covering. But if you're in an instructional situation for learning, the face shield is appropriate. Same thing for teachers. Face shields that completely cover the face, wrap around the face, and extend below the chin will be allowed to be worn by teachers at all grade levels, only in classroom settings during instructional periods. Again, transitioning in main common areas, they need to have on a cloth face covering. So I do believe many of the concerns that were needed for accommodations were listed here. But if you look at our policy, we do cite any type of ADA accommodations. I know if you look at our protocols, we are speaking a lot about instructional and classroom space. I do want to make sure that all other employees know that we do have ADA accommodations for them in specific situations. They just need to seek that information from their direct supervisor, and they will tell them how we can accommodate a specific type of face apparatus, whether it's a cloth covering or shield, depending on certain situations that they need. But that would be an ADA accommodation.
Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Superintendent Saunders, is the expectation then, and I'm on E, the one you just finished. Face shields that completely cover the face, and then it describes the shield, will be allowed to be worn by students in grades pre-K through 5 and students with disabilities, but in the students with disabilities, that implies K through 12?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay. Only in the classroom during specific instructional periods, as long as either social distancing is in place and or physical barriers or separation are in place. Okay, so just to be super clear, we expect the student to wear a cloth face covering, but when they're seated inside their classroom, they can take the mask off and put a shield on.
Yes, an instructional setting like that, but we also expect social distancing or the physical barriers.
Sorry, yeah, I left that
And
out.
if you're asking what that would be, many of them, especially in an elementary class, you'll have a reading table. So there could be a plastic barrier between a student and another student that may be, not 6 feet apart. So that way we've got another layer of protection. You probably have seen it on
I've seen
one
it.
of our pictures. We had two desks facing each other with a plastic shield, and they had a face shield in place there. So it kind of gives you a double protection without having a cloth face mask.
So the if there is not social distancing, the plexiglass provides
Would
that.
satisfy that extra barrier of protection.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about pre-K through 5. I was just, board members, I was thinking more of like pre-K through 2, but I don't know if anybody feels strongly about it because having seen over some of the summer activities in the district, how the third, fourth, and fifth graders didn't really seem to have a problem with masks.
And they
generally
may not
speaking.
choose the shield, they may prefer something else. We just thought some of them still have a bunch of literacy and reading, 90 block of reading class, so it may be applicable, so we put that caveat in there. I do think it's important for me to note what is not appropriate. And again, this is something that we used to see a lot of people wear, and I don't think until recent, we never heard guidance from CDC that it was not appropriate. It is the mask with the respiratory vent. CDC does not recommend mask if they have, it's called an exhalation valve or a vent. It's the ones that you have those, that you see on some of those that, and I've seen a bunch of them, but it
Dr.
was,
Hope's trumpet from the other night.
it was never even mentioned that those would not be appropriate until just recent. So unfortunately, and I know it's been frustrating for our parents and the community, it's such an ever-evolving virus with rules changing rapidly. And we do apologize for any frustration or concern or angst that this has caused. But it did force us to go back and reevaluate and do some research so that today we have the most current applicable information that all of our schools and all of our employees can follow.
Do you have any further questions?
Not for me.
Okay, Reverend Golden, I see you lit up to speak.
I'm sorry. Did
He wanted to call a question.
Vice Chair Kennedy said he had other questions?
I was done.
You done? Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we call the question.
Okay, there's been a motion to call the question. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Vote.
Passes 4-1. With that, Reverend Golden has called the question. We are on to the recommendation from the superintendent. It has been moved by Dr. Hopes, seconded by Mr. Minor. It is revisions to policy 8450, the control of casual contact communicable diseases. All those in favor of the revisions, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I move to authorize the superintendent and her staff to make any grammatical and punctuation corrections as deemed necessary to the policy and the operating protocols. That is my motion.
I've got a motion to allow the superintendent to make grammatical and punctuation changes to the policy. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Is there any discussion on this? Yes, Vice Chair Kennedy.
Just a question on the intent of the motion. We just addressed a few minutes ago, this CDC guidance may change, but Dr. Hoops, you feel like that's wrapped up in your motion?
Yeah, that the language in the operating procedures and the language in the policy specifically provide for whatever the current CDC guidance is to be incorporated. The reason for putting in the footnote as of the date of the passage of this, that the current guidance was dated August 11th, is just for reference, and that's in there.
I gotcha.
And I did want to let you know that your issue on the pre-K through 5, CDC's guidance was pre-K through 6. And I just assumed that whoever did it was like my age, back when 6th grade was in elementary school. And so that's why we moved it.
Well, that's how the certifications work too in Florida. Like my
Oh, is it?
certification is K to 6.
But yeah, I think it's there, and I think this motion covers the A face masks, face covering, or face coverings, adding the S and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it does too. And this is probably not part of the motion. I could just wait, but I just wanted to there, there's just been so much conversation about gators. But, and like I said, I really do prefer them, but I just kind of want to let people know that like gators are fine as long as they're cloth. It's just the polyester ones that are the danger. So, but it's covered in cloth face covering, so that's fine. So, thanks, Madam Chair.
Sure, and there's like an issue of their face mask is one word in one paragraph and face mask is 2 words in another paragraph, and so
Yeah, and
it's just, that's all the stuff that's wrapped up in this. So, all right, we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor of allowing for grammatical and punctuality changes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. We're on to general public comment. I think we've touched on everybody. Everybody came to talk about
Sure.
what they talked about. Yes.
I would like, and I had sort of requested it for the meeting, but the superintendent spoke with me yesterday. I would like sometime before we adjourn for the superintendent to provide the board with an update on the status of the district's readiness for welcoming our students back on Monday. I think it would be beneficial to the board and to the public to hear from the superintendent.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and that would be next if, Madam Superintendent, can you do that?
Absolutely. And I would also like for you to be aware that Mr. Barber is in his office listening to this while this was all taking place so that he could have this document communicated today and also translated in Spanish and listed on our district website, as well as a Connect Ed message to all family members so that they're well aware of the changes in place so that they know how to arrive on Monday in hand and properly outfitted with their protection devices that they need. I will tell you that Mr. Wagner and his whole division have worked tirelessly, as well as every teacher, para, custodian, principal. It's been a heavy lift, and I couldn't be more proud of all the work that the district staff and school personnel have put into this undertaking. We forget a lot about how a beginning of a school year starts anyway, but our parents and students have not been in school for 5 months, brick and mortar. So the anxiety is even higher, especially with the coronavirus at hand. So, but we do know every year there's always adjustments with transportation. However, I will tell you all the bus routes are done. We have all bus drivers hired and all routes adjusted with this year's change in the rezoning. So we've had a lot of changes this year. But it's Mr. Sawyer and his team's done a tremendous job. We feel very comfortable that the buses will be there bright and early. And it's probably the first year, this is my 8th year that I've been here, and have not had a lot of calls or concerns about transportation before the start of the year. I don't know if you heard any, but I've had very few. Maybe I can count them on one hand. So I'm very pleased and think that that is going to be an improvement. However, please note, there will be some transportation glitches. Even if we think it's perfect, it's never perfect. There will be some issues, and they generally always are worked out within the first week of school. We have supplies already distributed. I will tell you there's been a little bit of confusion there, but it was logistical. All the supplies had been purchased individually from the warehouse with the principals, and in many cases we found that they've kept them and distributed them to the classes in a bundle today and yesterday. Okay, so I think that was a little bit of a confusion because it made some think that there were missing supplies or they didn't have supplies, but Mr. Wagner, as you can tell, is probably a little tired right now because he's chased everyone because we want to make sure that people have supplies. Now, we're only giving out 2 weeks at a time. So soon as a week's done, the next week will be stocked, only because you're not going to stockpile a lot of that stuff on a counter or so forth in the room. Supplies are done. Food service. Regina Thoma's division has done a tremendous job in communicating out all of the food service. We now have a new ID badge situation, so all students will use their ID badge when they're getting on the bus so that we can identify each child, account for each child, as well as each child when they're going to get breakfast or lunch will be using their ID badge. That's going to be a very efficient way of knowing which kids and accounting for everything. And please note that if you're an e-learning student, you are still entitled for breakfast and lunch. When you come to get those items, you will get your ID badge at that time, so you're fully equipped to be able to get whatever nutritional needs you may have. The IT department has distributed thousands of Chromebooks. We've already identified those students that are doing e-learning that need a hotspot. Those have already been earmarked to students as well as computer devices. So if a student has decided to do full-time e-learning, internet or a computer device is not going to be a barrier for them. So that's already in place. I know our instructional division, Ms. Yost and team, have been working with teachers and ensuring that our Schoology platform is ready, and we've made improvements over the fourth quarter. The great thing about being one of the first school districts to go online, parents and students will determine where the best time to log in and not. You're not going to be kicked off because of millions of people doing online learning at one time. Our neighbors aren't on it yet, so we shouldn't have the beginning of the internet problem that we experienced in the springtime, because the whole state and the whole country was logging into Wi-Fi at the same time. So I know we've accounted for that, and we've made a lot of improvements in that area. Please know that high schools, and maybe even a little bit of middle schools, every year changes occur on selections through the 10-day count. I know, Mr. Kennedy, you've been a high school teacher. You're familiar with adjustments and schedules and enrollment, and some students don't come. Changes happen within the first 10 days. We have spoken to many, and because some schools scheduled electives in a different, more unusual way this year in order to get everybody kind of pigeoned into a course or a title, but those will be worked out within the first 10 days of school. But also know, all classes do not have the same available seats that they had in the past, especially in electives. You can't put 25 and 30 kids in a classroom at one time. So we're spreading those out. We have also incorporated many more online courses. So if an elective is full, we're adding those through our Manatee virtual program so they can get it that way if they're not able to get it with a brick and mortar teacher. So Don Sowers over that department, he's working with the schools. We're adding many sections in that regard because we've got to make sure that we're having social distancing in those brick and mortar classes, and that's how we're accommodating some of those changes. I will tell you that everybody's put forth a large effort to ensure that parents feel comfortable, that their children feel comfortable. I'm excited about seeing them coming back. I've been in schools and it's been odd not to see students in them. Our summer learning camp was a small version of what we will experience, but it's nothing like starting out in the fall. Some of the other questions that many of you may have today, I believe the Florida High School Athletic Association ruled to have sports begin next week. What I will say is we have to now go back and define a plan. I will have that plan and speak to the board, and we will communicate out whatever we're going to do in the coming days. So please, if anyone has questions about that, we haven't got there yet. Our concentration right now is to open our schools. Let's see how that's going, and we will come up with an appropriate plan of how we're going to undertake athletics for the fall season and any seasons thereafter. But we do not have that defined yet, but we will. We will work on that soon.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Superintendent? Vice Chair Kennedy?
Yeah, I just have a couple follow-up items from previous meetings. Superintendent Saunders, and I know this from one of your email responses this week about the Palmetto case, which has sent 8 or 9 people home. And in your response, you said that those employees who are on quarantine, not the positive case, but those who are exposed are on, I think you called it a work from home duty, or
Yes.
So that does not. Just want to be sure that so none of those employees who are at home in quarantine are using any of their sick days.
That is correct, sir.
Is the plan that will be the plan carrying forward until we're through this thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, so an employee's never going to have to use a sick day for something that was not their own fault.
You're 100% correct. If they are, isolated due for precautionary reasons from a work situation, then it is a work from home status, and it does not impact their sick time at all.
Okay, good. The other item I wanted to just be super clear on is for students and for employees, and obviously we're coming back Monday, like all first days, even in normal times, there's some wobbliness about the rules. And I mean, in my opinion, clearly we've got to support each other. We've got to support the students about masks and shields. But for employees, and people have differing levels of passion around mask enforcement, obviously. I mean, hopefully we'll err on the side of supporting each other and gentle reminders. But what will be, once we're past that period, what will be the enforcement mechanism if somebody, for example, refuses to wear a mask?
If you're talking about a student,
Both.
and we've worked diligently and consideration, again, every school and every place of employment have masks to give. So if someone forgets or so forth, we'll work with them. If it's just a situation where a student just chooses is not going to wear one because of the pandemic and the safety considerations of others, that's not going to be the best platform for their instructional delivery. An e-learning platform is going to be a better option for that student. Just for the safety of themselves and the safety and protection of others, we have to take that into consideration. So that is how, we're not going to keep writing a student up or suspending a student. That doesn't make sense. That's just not the right environment. So right now, if a child wants to come to school, they are going to have to wear some sort of a facial apparatus, whether it's a gaiter, it's a shield, it's a mask. They will have to have on face covering. So hopefully, because all of them could choose not to come. So I can't imagine we're going to be faced with many that way because they don't have to be there. Unfortunately, same thing with employees. It's really not an option. It is a requirement. We have a policy, and that will be addressed by individual supervisors, but it's not an option to come to work or to remain at work. Again, if you're outside mowing the grass, we've outlined areas where you can remove it,
Sure.
but if you're in the building, around people or in main areas, you have to have face covering.
And that's what I'm getting at.
Absolutely.
Willfully ignoring.
Absolutely. Yeah, that unfortunately will not be tolerated.
Okay. I have 2 more quick ones. Dr. Hopes, you mentioned last week about the question going on with Jimmy Petronas about the workman's comp issue. Has any of that been sorted out since?
Yeah, I think the way the superintendent's handling it, we'll follow up. I mean, one thing that I learned is that we're self-insured for work comp. And so I think the position,
Either way.
yeah, and so I think we probably will find ourselves in an area of greater flexibility. I think we will work through this. And as I mentioned, I think the superintendent has come up with a mechanism where our employees who may have experienced a workplace exposure, not through their own fault, will not have to use their sick time or their paid time off. I will work with the CFO on what I think is the more important issue. They're both important, but I would not want us to have to pay basically commercial insurance rates for medical care for a workplace injury, because in any other setting, this would be a workplace injury that would be covered under work comp, and therefore under the state's work comp rates for hospital services, physician services, et cetera. And so fortunately to date, none of our medical expenses have been for workplace exposure. They've been employees that have been exposed outside of the workplace. But I'm comfortable that I think we have a pathway, and I think we will be successful in that. So I think it's not completed yet. Of course, you know, the state, the FEA is working on it, and then I'll work on it on our behalf as a self-insured work comp employer.
Okay, great. Speaking of the Florida Education Association, just before we came in today, the judge in Leon County threw out the state's motion to dismiss. So the emergency injunction is continuing, and they've been ordered to mediation on Tuesday morning. Well, it won't really matter to us. We're starting on Monday, but it's going to be an interesting case to watch next week for sure. So usually the courts in Tallahassee or the state Supreme Court has found that teachers or the teachers unions don't have standing in these cases, but the judge today ruled that we do have standing. So that was an interesting development. So we'll check in on that on Tuesday. Thanks, Madam Chair. That's it for me.
Okay, Reverend Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the other issues that came up Tuesday night was that we had quite a representation from people who were concerned about the arts, music, and what have you. Have we been able to resolve the issue of modalities that would allow the maximum amount of support for continuing the electives regardless of the modalities that are involved? And for those of you who may not know, the modalities that are involved here are three: inline, online learning, the hybrid model of delivery of education, and the brick and mortar delivery, which I learned from Mrs. Odell at Manatee High School the other day. I'm done. So, in all seriousness, do we have any further input for those people who raised those concerns at Tuesday's meeting?
Yes, sir. Like I said, the high schools are working on that, and they have a plan within the first 10 days to place the students with the appropriate teacher with the appropriate course. Now, are we going to be able to offer exactly all the courses, all the specific entities as we did last year? No. But we will be able to offer more than music theory or world music cultures, which were the two catch-alls that it appeared that they were in. And their plan, after going out and visiting many, was to place them there, and then they'll divide them out to the appropriate teacher with the appropriate number, and then call the courses band 1, 2, 3, 4, orchestra 1, 2, 3, 4, chorus, etc. So again, I don't know that I would have came up with that scheduling method, but it wasn't for me to determine how to schedule them. They have a plan. I think part of our common thread that we find ourselves in is communication, communication, communication. So I think some that were executing the work knew the thought process and the end result of what they were trying to achieve. But if all the players at the table, the teachers, the parents, the students, aren't aware, then there's a big disconnect. So I do think that we've been working on that. Mr. Clark has been working with them, and I've gone to a number of schools, and I do believe that a lot of that will be improved. It's not going to be perfect, but never in any year does every child get everything that they ask for either. But it will be much improved than what it has been.
Will that be across the grade levels, or are we mostly focusing on the high schools?
It's predominantly really a secondary issue, more in high school than anything else, because high schools have more offerings than anyone else does. Elementary, it's, it's many of the same entities. If you have specials, everybody are in them. High schools have their, and different high schools offer different things. So that's what the issue is. There's a lot of offerings and a lot of considerations. But I know they're working hard to ensure, because we want the students to be successful, and we want them to be happy, and we want them to be in the courses that drive their willingness and desire to come to school. It does not benefit anyone to not try to place them in the courses that are really going to make them want to come to school on a daily basis.
I appreciate that, but I'm an old clarinetist. I started playing the clarinet in the 4th grade.
So you and Mr. Hope, Dr. Hopes are the same, he was,
Cornet and trumpet and.
okay, he's a
Connor's
trumpet. Okay, we have our own
He's a
band.
lead instrument.
We have our own band here.
I'm thinking the same thing. We're getting there.
And the reality, though, is that those early years, the reason I raise it, seriously, those early years are the foundational years when you learn.
Elementary will have music. The difference, though, right now, is elementary and middle have a lot of shared instruments. We've got to work through some of those issues because of COVID. Things aren't exactly 100% as pre-COVID, but they do have some ways. I know that they're also looking for getting additional things. Each student is going to have their own material box for their regular classrooms, because we really don't want them sharing things, touch points that other students are using. So there will be some modifications, but they will have art, music, PE, STEM. Those are all in every elementary school. So none of those things have been removed or cut.
So would it be fair to say that for the foundational years of those people who are interested in music development, that it would really be appreciated if we could get instruments donated so that those children who would like to develop their potential in music can have the necessary instruments to overcome the problems that have arisen because of COVID-19?
Maybe one thing that would be helpful is we'll have Miss Yost work with her fine arts specialist and music teachers, specifically in our elementary grade, in some middle school, because there's some shared instruments there.
Yes.
And see if we can come up with a list of needed things
Yes.
and that may be available for those that are interested in. But that's going to be the biggest issue in elementary, because in the past there are, equipments and instruments that are shared.
We could post that and perhaps put out a call to the community
Sure.
for help to alleviate some of those problems. We have the students who are interested, the teachers who could provide the education, but we're missing the instruments to staff up for that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Hopes?
Thank you. I wanted to, a few things. And again, I wanted to thank the student from MSA. And in the CDC's guidance, as you stated, around opening schools and operating schools during COVID-19, there are 3 risk levels. The lowest risk is e-learning. Moderate risk is basically what our hybrid is, where you spend some time on campus, some time e-learning. And then the highest risk is the 5 days a week on campus. And so you're right on target, and I explained some of the reasons why we've offered the options that we've offered. I would like to go back to Mr. Kennedy mentioned the most recent incident of a positive case on campus, where I think it was 9 staff members were sent on quarantine. Up until this point, we'd only had a couple per case of exposures. If we have a known case and we have 1 or 2 additional contacts, in my mind, that's kind of incidental. I can almost live with that. The problem I have with having, at this date, having 9 additional contacts is I don't see how it occurred if everyone was following the board's guidance and policy with regards to social distancing. We had no students on campus. And so if those employees, and I mean this for all of our employees, if our employees are following the guidance that we had laid out, you shouldn't have had 9 other people in close contact with that known case. A couple I can buy, but that only occurred because, first and foremost, we're also the only school district, I think, in the state that has our own COVID-19 command center with a full-time epidemiologist from the health department, director of nursing, our own health and safety folks, so we can immediately do that contact tracing. But I would like, my colleagues to understand, 9 other people were sent home for 14 days because they did not have appropriate distancing and or wearing masks, et cetera. I mean, we can look at the case, but the mere fact that with all of our resources, we identified that there were 9 other people that had exposure to that one case, no students on campus. That shouldn't have occurred. 1 or 2 incidental, that's almost like an accident. But 9 means that people were too close for too long, and one of those people happened to be a positive case. And so we've got to try to improve upon that as an example. And the other thing I'd like to add, Madam Chair, is it's really just a message for all of our parents, our employees. Everyone has really been working hard, and I ask for everybody to be patient and tolerant as we work through these first few weeks of students coming back on campus. We have not had students in large amounts on campus for almost 5 months, going on 6 months. We had a few students during summer school. And so this is not a normal opening. We have many issues when we open schools in the best of times. And we're going to be welcoming our students back, and there are going to be changes. We have done an exceptional job at planning, but in any planning, you don't know what you need to change until you actually put that plan into action. And that's what starts on Monday. What starts on Monday is all the planning comes together, and we will identify where changes need to be made. So I just ask, our parents, our students, our employees, and the general public to just be patient and tolerant with us all. We are all in this together. We've all been burning the midnight candle, and many of our administrators are going to be working all weekend, working on scheduling and cleaning things up. So, please give your child's teachers and school administrators an opportunity to work through the challenges and issues in the weeks leading up to our Labor Day break. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Minor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I welcome the remarks that the superintendent had with respect to the programs of music and orchestra and chorus, band, and theater. And I guess I'm seeking some clarification. At least in high school, we're going to have band, orchestra, and choir, and theater. Okay, well, I think that's great news for a lot who felt that maybe it was going to be lost. Are we able to do that in the middle schools too now?
I believe the middle schools are all set. I've not heard any reason to believe they're not. So
Okay.
I believe the middle schools are in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you. I think you know how important that is to me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, it is, oh, look at all those people trying to flee the room. It is 3:24 p.m. on August 14th, and I'm going to adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice job.